Dear Mrs. Göttingen, on a fine June morning, we were on our way to a place where the only sounds were the chirps of the birds and the whispers of the trees. I was standing facing the other side of the minivan, laughing at my colleagues' jokes. But suddenly, as if my feet were exhausted, I slumped into the first seat facing the road. My feet were fine. It was my mind that needed a break. My eyes then wandered onto the rolling road outside the window, and within minutes I spotted 1, 2, 4, and several places where I would have loved to stop or diverge if I were alone. Why are we not stopping for these places? I wondered, and then thought, what am I doing here? I wanted to ask the moving vehicle to stop so I could bid goodbye to my colleagues. Thanks for the ride, but this is where we part ways. But the wheels kept rolling until we reached the forest stay. The next morning, while descending from a beautiful viewpoint where we paused for a few minutes, as if that's all this wonderful scene deserved, a colleague said, "We are walking past places we should pause and admire." I nodded. She was right. We were marching down the hill as if we were being chased by enemies. She then pointed at a tree and said, "Look, that tree hasn't woken up yet." We laughed. The tree indeed had a lazy aura. Later, I asked her if she writes. She turned to me and asked, "How did you know?" Based on our conversations that morning and the previous evening, it was an easy guess. She wasn't just sharing thoughts. She was narrating experiences, making spontaneous stories. On our way to the forest, I saw a metro pass by when we stopped for breakfast. While the team was still in the restaurant, I waited for the next metro to arrive. "Come on, please," I prayed. It didn't show up, but a pat on my shoulder did. It was my manager. "You look lost," he said. I gave him a silly shoulder shrug like a child caught in mischief. Later that night, in the crackling sounds of a fire, he walked over, holding a drink, and said, "There's this song," which he hummed. "The actual song sounds much better," he said, "but it did well." He's a good storyteller whose narratives I can listen to all night, and I did, along with 2 colleagues, as we sat outside a cottage home listening to stories I hadn't heard in almost 5 years of knowing him. When the talk went on past midnight, we spotted deers, more than a dozen, their eyes glittering in the dark, giving away their positions. I'm drifting off, Mrs. Göttingen. I'm so sorry. Where was I? The song. Yes. You remind me of that song, seeming lost, wandering off the group. There's another word I can't recall, my manager said, sipping his drink. The moon that night was fully bright, its glow reflected in the quiet river's ripples. "A nomad?" suggested another teammate, a teetotaler chewing chicken. "Yes, a nomad," exclaimed my manager. I took note of the song, Musafir, and asked, "What does it mean?" "The song roughly translates to a traveler with no home," he said. During my time here in the forest, I found several perfect reading spots. Some are ideal to sit and write. You have to watch out for alligators though, unless you want to be their meal. And a nomad? I don't deny the desire to be one. Isn't it a craving many of us harbor, to journey to places we find appealing? Except for a few like my friend. "Don't you like to travel?" I asked. "Oh, I would love to," she replied. "But what about lizards?" she questioned. "I'll let you rest now, Mrs. Göttingen, while I try to relive the quiet walks in this place listening to this song on a loop. Best wishes, Brooding Brook, to Mrs. Göttingen, 1920, Switzerland, from the book A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway."
जाना है बस चल